So welcome everyone to today's webinar session. That topic is in-country review explained. But before we would jump into this topic, I would do a quick housekeeping that is the following. So the webinar is going to be recorded, and this recording will be available on our website and on our YouTube channel soon after the webinar. The presentation is going to be about around 40 minutes. That is going to be followed by a 10 to 15 minutes Q&A session. Regarding the Q&A session, we would kindly ask you to use the Zoom's Q&A tab to ask your questions. Please do not use the chat to do that. We will provide answers to the questions live, and to those questions that we will not be able to answer, we'll provide you answer to those too later on in the Q&A sheet through email. And now let me introduce today's presenters. The main presenter today is Ines Berbado, who is a technical solutions specialist at memoQ, and she is accompanied by our senior product manager, Zsolt Varga, who is going to be helping to answer the question and also will cover the last section of the webinar. And now, Ines, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Helga. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us today for this ICR webinar. So without further ado, let's dig right into it and see what in-country review is for those of you who might not know what it is yet. In-country review, or ICR as we call it, is an important quality assurance step in the localization process. This step is usually, or at least very often, performed outside of a translation tool by non-translators, otherwise known as the subject matter experts, SMEs. These experts are sometimes on the client side and will simply work on the translated document in the original file format, using comments and track changes, or worse, even review directly in PDF format using the infamous sticky notes. This manual review entails more manual work for several parties, though, namely the teams responsible for the update and final formatting of the document, and the localization team who needs to implement such changes in their initial work to make sure that if ever they get a new version in the future, something content related, they will have the approved version in their tool to reuse. Quite a cumbersome and time-consuming process, right? So, well, what if it could tell you that we can make this as seamless and efficient of a process by using the ICR tool? This is exactly what memoQ aims to achieve with this tool here. ICR-Tool is a web-based, and it's also designed to be easy to use by all, even people with basic computer skills. In-country reviewers, the SMEs then, can easily verify the translation in target language, which means that it will be no extra work for project managers because the changes will instantly be reflected into the memoQ environment, depending on the options chosen. We'll discuss that in a minute. Including the in-country review process into the localization process before the final formatting stage avoids back and forth between stakeholders of a project, but it also allows all parties to save a lot of time. So without further ado, let's dive right in and see how we can configure the ICR step and how easy it is for SMEs to perform their task inside the ICR tool. So a little word about our agenda. We will first check how we can create such ICR users into memoQ. We will then have a quick workaround how we set up the ICR configuration, then how we assign an ICR task to an ICR user, and of course, the whole ICR process as a subject matter expert inside memoQ. The last part of this webinar will be covered by Zsolt. He will give us a little speech on accessibility with ICR, and then we will go to the questions. So let's start. I will share my screen with you. All right. So as I said, the first step, if we want to use in-country reviewers, is to create such users. So as a PM or as an administrator, I can come into memoQ and I can create users. I will use the web only today. And from here, from the admin view, I can quickly, well, either change the group membership of some of my existing users, or I can simply create a new one. So let's go through this process real quick. I will call this one ICR webinar, the username ICR1, for example. Then we need an email address because this person will get notifications. You also have the option to make them set their own password if you send them an email, or we can simply just create a password right from here. There you go. Then the next most important thing here is to choose the right group. And so from here, I can usually just go real quick through here, find the in-country reviewer group. This is the group that those users need to be added to if I want them to use the ICR tool for their task. So I'm applying the group, and I can also add language pairs, which could help me speed up the process of assignment later on, if ever that's something that I wish to do. So let me just add some languages here and create my user. And that's basically it. So once my users are created, obviously, if I need to create several, I can. I'm done with the user part. Now, the next step is to create my ICR configuration. And for that, I will need to go through resources. This is where you find ICR configurations. And from here, obviously, if it's your first time, it will be empty and you can just create a new one. Now, for this purpose, for this webinar, it will be just easier to open one that I've already created just to see together what are the options. So from here, this is one of the ICR configurations I've already set up for myself. Step here is to give it a name, obviously. So mine is very generic, but if you have many different ICR configurations, you can go with something more specific. And then we have mainly the settings that I need to go through. The main one I'd say here, the most important one for you to decide as a team is whenever I ask an in-country reviewer to step in a project, what do I want them to be able to do? Do I want them to only comment on whatever they would like to change? Or do I give them more responsibilities and allow them to edit and comment? Today, we'll go with this option just so you can see most of the functionalities there, but just know that you have those two options available. Then for track changes, that's pretty simple. If you're a memoQ user, you know that already. As a project manager, we can allow track changes to show automatically when a reviewer steps into a project, or we can go with showing only the final version. This is a setting that the in-country reviewer himself can change later if they want to switch from one view to the next. Now for tag formatting, you'll tell me, why would I leave tags in there for the reviewer? We will go with the short version, just so I want to make it as short as possible, give full space for the content itself. But that's also something that the ICR, the in-country reviewer, can change the display in the editor if need be. The next option I have here in my settings is to decide if I want to make the quality assurance part of the ICR process, which means that the QA that we use as translators and reviewers inside memoQ can also be used at the ICR stage if I allow it. And if I allow it, I can also decide what kind of categories I still want to show, I still want to display for that ICR user to go through if ever they were not all corrected by the previous participants in the project. So I will leave everything ticked for today, but that's for you to choose. Then the next element here is project resources, and that's quite powerful here because, again, the whole idea here is to avoid as many back and forth or related emails to a project. So there's an option here for the project managers to include some resources that we translators or reviewers use inside memoQ. So namely reference files. If we were given any reference files by a client or have any style guides that we want to share with the in-country reviewers, then we can select them from here. So we can decide if we want to have them all or if we want to have specific reference files showing. Then we have term bases. That's also very powerful here because I can decide what kind of term bases I want to add. I might have several in my project. I could decide to add them all as reference, or I could go with the rank one only or primary resource, which would be the one that has been fed during translation. And the last one is non-translatable lists. We'll see how it looks like in the ICR tool later. The last option in my settings is to add a message if I want to. There's no obligation here, but maybe I want to add a short message for the reviewer with instructions or anything else that's relevant. Now, this is all I need to do to create my configuration. Once I'm done, it will be available here from my resources, and I can pick one or the next time that I'm in a project. All right, one thing that I wanted to mention here as well is that if you are into automation much and you are using memoQ templates, know that you can also pre-configure your ICR configuration inside your template, which means that you will be able to say, okay, every time I use this template, I want to use this specific ICR configuration. And ICR can also be configured, the ICR users at least, can be configured in people and also be used into the auto assign of the automated actions. So that's one thing that you can do. Right, now that we have our ICR users and our ICR configuration, we can go into a project and we can assign an ICR step. Obviously, usually when you create a project and you start the assignment, you do all assignments at once. In this case, I specifically created a project for this webinar where I haven't assigned the ICR user yet, just so you could see what are the steps that I'm going through. Right. So this is my project. It's been already translated. It's one document into French Canada. It's been translated for today. Now, I initially hadn't thought about having an ICR step, but right now I want to. So I will just simply come here and add my ICR user. So the one I want to use here is this one. I can also decide what kind of documents I want to assign. If I had multiple or in multiple languages, I could go with the different options. And you'll see that the minute that I click on assign, I get this new window where I can select the ICR configuration that I want to use. So as I said, if I have pre-configured it in a template, it will have picked it up. But here, since I am not using one, I will have to choose from this list. So I can either go with the default one, or I can simply scroll and pick the one that I want to use. And I get this summary of what my configuration includes, and I can quickly have a look. And if I'm happy with that, I'll just apply it. The next step here, obviously, would be to change my deadline, give it a little more time, not just the time it is right now where I am. So we'll go with tomorrow at 10 a.m. and I'll set the deadline. Now, this is the manual way of assigning an ICR user. As I said, we could automate some of that with templates, or even from here, I can also choose to go with an advanced assignment, which could go here. And let me just go right here. So I have the manual assignment that I just made, but what if I just changed my mind? I realized maybe I'm not even sure this ICR person can work on this project. So I could go with those options too as well. I could go with the first one, which is first accept. First accept is basically a first come, first serve kind of thing. So if I select it, I can then add multiple users and say, well, I don't know who can take that. So I will just send a notification to all of these people and see who picks it up. And the first person to pick it up will get to work on the project. We will see how this works and how this shows into the ICR interface in a minute for an ICR user. I could also go with group sourcing. Group sourcing is the second option for advanced assignment, which would be the assignment of multiple users to the same document to allow them to access it as a team and decide upon themselves who takes what to go through the whole project. Right. I'm happy with my manual assignment, so I'll just cancel. And now that I'm done with my assignment, I will launch my project, and this will trigger the notification to the ICR person. And so this is the kind of notification that an ICR user would receive, in this case for a manual assignment. It tells the ICR user a little bit about the project number, what's the document that's been assigned, what's the deadline, and obviously the username, and also a link to access directly the ICR tool on the web. So I could click this link, but I already have it right there. So we can dive right in here. Once the ICR user has their own password, they either created it themselves or the PM created it for them, they can simply go to the server URL and then enter their credentials to go in. So right now I will connect, and don't worry, this is in French, but the rest will be in English. There you go. All right, this is now from the standpoint of the in-country reviewer. As of now, up until now at least, I was a project manager, configuring everything in the background so that my ICR user could go into the ICR tool and get started on the jobs that I have assigned. So right now, I will be, from now on at least, I will be in the shoes of the ICR user. And this is basically the dashboard that I get as an ICR user. So it's my review tasks. As you see here on the first portion of the screen, I have the first accept tasks. So on top of the ongoing tasks that I have approved with the PM himself before, I have those first accept. And from this window, I can decide if I want to take this job or not. So accept it or reject it. And if someone does accept it before me, then it won't show anymore inside my dashboard. Now, regarding the dashboard here for my review tasks, I always get the document name, the project name, language pair, because you might be working in multiple language pairs too, the status, which is pretty important because you have the new ones that need to be started, the ones that you've already started, and also the ones that are not yet available. I can still access it, but it tells me that the steps before me were not finished yet. One thing I haven't mentioned either is that the ICR users can be used in either R1 and R2 roles. So reviewer 1, reviewer 2, the last two steps in the memoQ workflow process. I also have my deadline showing, so I can also filter to see what's the most urgent first, or filter by any type here. And I also have the size of the projects that I need to work on. I have the options here to filter also, or if I want to see a specific project, because I have many on my review tasks. Now, from this main screen, we also have the help button. If ever it is the first time that I'm using ICR, I might not be too familiar with it yet. And if I want to read a bit more about it, I can go to the help in the memoQ documentation on memoQ docs. So that's one option that you have here. And another one in the options that I think will make some people happy is the option of the dark mode that I can go through, or light. And also, of course, the display language. The languages that are available here are the same as in the memoQ environment that you already know. I will stick to English for now, but it is right there. Right. Now that I've seen what's on my dashboard, what's on my plate, I need to decide what's the next one I need to work on. And for today, we'll be working on this specific project. So when you open an ICR task for the very first time, you will get this details with the instructions. Remember the instructions that I, as a project manager earlier, added to my configuration. It shows here for the ICR user. I also have the deadline showing one more time. And it also explains what I will be able to do in this project. I'm allowed to edit and comment on the target segments. I can use the track changes button to switch from one version to the next, so track changes or final version. And I can also play with the tags to see them in a different display. If I want to get back to this specific summary of my task, after I've opened my project for the first time, it will be available under the help button, my review task details, if I want to see it again. And again, under the help button this time, I also have a tutorial. So again, if it is my first time and I want to have a quick tour and be guided through the interface, I can use it and go through all the steps to see what it is that I can do here. Right. Now at the top here, we also have the option to show the preview. It was not there by default, but now I have it. The eye is now closed because it's here. I could hide it again if it's not relevant to me, but otherwise I can leave it open and I can also reorganize my things here if I want to. Also, another thing that we've seen during the configuration earlier is the reference files. Reference files have been added to this project for me. So my document is photo 2, the one that I'm reviewing. And it seems that I was also provided with the PDF version of it. I can simply download it and keep a version of it. And I've also been given a photo 1 document, which will most probably be useful in this because it has some more context for me. So I could simply download them right here. In the help, again, I also have keyboard shortcuts. So if I am a fan of keyboard shortcuts, I want to go faster in my work, I can open it and I would have here a small list of them. If I want to see more, I have the option right here. Now, what can I do as an ICR user here? So as we saw, mainly I was given the responsibility to edit and comment on this project. So as I go through the different segments, I will be able to use the options that are right here, right on top, and work into the editor. It is displayed the exact same way that you would have it in memoQ in the default view, which is source on the left, target on the right, and you have all of the functionalities at the top. And we will discuss these options on the right in a second. So mainly what I can do as an ICR user here is do or undo whatever, redo or undo whatever I've just done. I can use some formatting if ever it was missed during the previous steps. For example, if this not had been in bold and underline, I could have added those elements. I can also toggle the case if I need to put uppercase or lowercase, subscript and superscript and subscript. That's all we have regarding basic formatting here. As mentioned earlier, we also have how tags would show. So right now I have small tags that show only a number just to make it smaller here. But if I, for any reason, want to see them bigger, I can also change the view. Now, if any tag are missing, usually they shouldn't because the translation team up ahead did what they had to do to replicate them. But if I need to, I will have this button to implement them. And as you see, between parentheses, I also get the shortcut as a reminder. Now, track changes. If I use track changes, I mean, I will use track changes, but if I'm not very happy with that, I'm going to change this. And of course, okay. There you go. If I am a bit tired of seeing the track changes here, and I want to see my work in final version, I can simply do it here. And the good thing with that is that I can also decide, do I want to see only my changes, or do I also want to see all changes? Because remember that I could be, right now I'm R1, I'm in the reviewer 1 role, but I could also intervene in this project as a reviewer too. And if I do, there will most probably already be track changes inside the editor, which could make it a bit confusing at some point. So I can decide if I want to see all changes, absolutely all of them, mine, including the previous participant, only my changes, or show only final. Right now, we'll stay with my changes. Now, if I want to use the options of spell checking, I can. It is on by default, but if I don't want to, I can also disable it. And then we have everything to filter and find easily in a document. Obviously, this document is pretty short, but imagine you are working on a very big ICR assignment and you want to go to a specific segment. You can jump from one row to the next by just entering it and enter right there. There's also the filtering options. I can filter for some content into the source or the target language. And I can also decide if I want to search in all the segments or if I want to search where there are my changes or my comments, which can be also very useful. And obviously, the last one that doesn't need to be introduced is the find and replace option as well. If I go through my ICR here, I will see that at some point I might have some issues coming up, some warnings. I might also see that there are existing comments in the project, and I will be able to go through them either one by using this option of focus on row, which means that anything that's related to this segment, terminology-wise, comments-wise, warnings from quality assurance, will show in this lateral window here. If I'm not so much into going one by one, and I want to search, for example, for all comments, I can come to this second option to see all the comments. There's one that I could possibly add here, but there's also the one that's already been added by the person before me in the process. If I go back to focus on row, we can see that since I added as a project manager earlier terminology, we get some terminology entries here. And again, this was the project manager's choice. If we do not want to include terminology, QA, none of that, because we want to have a pretty straightforward ICR process, that is also possible. The project manager has control over those steps and configurations. And now what's interesting here is that I see that the terminology should be photo in French for photo in English, and specifically not image, which is a forbidden term. It says right here, you can't use this item. Although for some reason, the translator before me decided to use it. Maybe they didn't pay attention, they didn't see that this terminology was forbidden. So I will use my task here to just edit it. And I just did. And if I wanted to add a comment on top of this to explain why I did the change, if I need to be more specific, clarify anything, I can obviously select and then add a comment right here. I'm adding my comments. You'll see that comments will have two different displays. The ones that are mine will have a fully colored box here for the comment box. And the ones that were left by someone in the process before me will be empty, just blank like that, with the number 1 to show. And see, all comments, including mine, are now showing in this section as well. Now, another thing that we said was possible as resources included into the ICR were non-translatable lists. Non-translatable lists are lists that can be created by translators, mostly, usually, for example, for brand names or any specific terminology that should never be translated. So it's kind of an extra of terminology, just so you wouldn't create terminology for dark whenever it's not really relevant. Non-translatable could be useful. And I see here that I have one, and it was not translated the way it was supposed to be. That was good. So I don't have to change anything. But yeah, it is right there for me to use. One thing that's useful as well that I haven't commented on here is if ever I want to, instead of typing, since I see here that photo should be used, I can use this little symbol to insert the item where it should be. And that's it. And I don't know if you saw right there, but the second, see, it's saved all the time here. So whatever I changed is already reflected into the memoQ environment in the background. So I don't need to use any confirm button or be scared that maybe if, I don't know, I'm going away for a minute or something, it will not get saved. It will. It will always get saved in here. Now, regarding the issues, we have here at the bottom, the last part, all issues in row number 1. So in my segment 1, it's everything related to the forbidden term, but now I've used photo, so it will be fixed. Now, if I come, for example, to here, I see that there is an extra number in the target, 68, probably instead of 78. So memoQ helped me with that the way it does in the usual QA. And since, yeah, it's this little mistake that was included, I can just simply correct it and move on to the next. If I want to check all issues of the quality check, I can do it from this section. So the same way you would probably want to run your QA on your project at the end of it as a translator or a reviewer inside memoQ, you might want to do the same as an ICR user, not to go through it every single time, every segment, You might just want to use this option to filter all issues or group them, because you have the option to group them by row or by issue type, just so you can have a look at them, right? Once I'm done with my review here and adding maybe some comments, see here, the one that was left by the translator was Jolie would also be another option to translate nice. I can say, no, I like Belle. All good. There you go, adding my comment. This is not the most relevant comment, but you get the gist here. Right, I've done through my old ICR. I have corrected what I needed to correct. I have commented what I needed to comment on. I have checked the issues that were still there because the QA was included for me to have a look at. The last step that I have to go through is simply to deliver my task whenever I am happy with it. And once I do that, the ICR process is officially completed. That's it. So at this point, there are two scenarios. Remember that today we decided to go with the configuration where I was able as an ICR user to edit and comment. But that's the thing. If the SME was allowed to edit the translation, the reviewed copy was directly saved into the translation memory in real time. So no sticky notes again, or no back and forths. And the workflow is basically completed. The document can be now exported by the project manager and delivered. In the second scenario, if the SME only had commenting rights, there will be a last participant going through the document, most probably, and implement the changes deemed relevant, and therefore updating the TM with the final version. And of course, then there's export and delivery again. Now, before we move on to the QA, I would like to invite our senior product manager, Joel Varga, to say a few words about accessibility. Jolt, over to you.
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you, Ines. Hi, everyone. So just a few words about accessibility. We introduced accessibility in memoQ back in 10.1 with memoQ WebTrans, the current web editor. And it was a huge development because what we call the edit box, which is the cell within the translation grid, it was not natively supported by screen readers. So that's why we had to introduce an accessibility mode that you have to manually turn on if you need to use that. We had a lot of issues to fix, but all that is the thing of the past, because with the in-country review tool, as well as the new version of the memoQ editor that we are going to release later, most probably the first version in the last part of this year. So the in-country review tool is going to support natively screen readers, meaning that there's no accessibility mode to switch on in the ICR. All you have to do is just activate your screen reader. We have tested it with JAWS and also MBDA, and they work like a dream. So everything is visible, all the content, the translation grid, as well as the side panel and everything visible to the screen readers. Just a month ago, we tested it with an actual blind translator, and also previously we tested it with users with limited eyesight, and they all reported quite favorably back about the ICR. They did point out certain issues that we are going to fix in later editions. These issues they do not impede the review process. It's just about mostly navigation and labeling all the content that are necessary for the screen readers to read out to the users. Those are invisible content, invisible to sighted users. So basically, that's the only thing that I wanted to report. So anyone who has any issue with accessibility, just feel free to give it a try, and feel free to contact us if you find any specific issues to fix. But we do take it seriously, and we want to make sure that all our users have, if not equal opportunities in experiencing the software, but we try and support users with visual issues and limited eyesight so that they can use our next generation of tools. If you have any more specific questions, feel free to ask. Other than that, let me turn the mic over back to Ines.
All right, and we will now go into our Q&A. I see we already have one question. If ever you have other questions, please feel free to add them to the Q&A little boxes there. So the first one that we have here, and I think, Jolt, I will let you answer this one. I will read it for you. I know there will be a separate webinar about PDF review in the translation editor. Will be possible also in the ICR tool. SMEs often check on the final laid out version, so it would be useful. Jolt, over to you.
Yeah, the PDF preview tool is a desktop tool, so no, it's not integrated with the ICR tool. We hope to be able to do some more integrations in the future in parallel with the new memoQ editor, but at this point, it's only supported in the desktop version. So the next one is to you then.
Yeah. Kim, hi Kim. Reference files, where were they added? That's a very good question. Thank you for asking it. So the reference files were simply added by the project manager into LiveDocs. So whenever you use LiveDocs and you import into a LiveDocs corpus a reference file, not to be confused with the other option that's just the import document, you have the import reference file. This is the kind of file that's available to ICR users if you use that option. Next question here, does ICR-Tool work already in the memoQ or will it be available in the new version? So the ICR-Tool has been available since version 10.1. And so yeah, it means that it is already available. And as Jolt mentioned, there will still be a few improvements possibly in the future, but yes, it is already available. What is the difference between an ICR and a normal reviewer? Thank you for this question. So basically, if it is someone from the translation team, you might as well just want them to use memoQ the way the translators use it, because they will work in the same environment. They can discuss any functionalities in there. The main goal with ICR is to have non-translators or people that are not necessarily familiar with any CAT tools, anything that's used in the localization industry, to be able to perform their review task. That's the main difference here that we want to highlight. Can the ICR user deliver without confirming all segments first? So as previously mentioned, I don't need to confirm anything. I don't confirm at all at any stage in the ICR process. The minute that I change something in a segment, it is automatically saved. So if in the end I decide to only change one thing, then that's basically it. And then I can just deliver. So there are no restrictions to having to confirm all segments as there is with the R2 role itself in memoQ. Is it possible for the ICR user to also see matches from the translation memory within the ICR tool? The answer is no, because basically, again, to go back to what I just said, we want to make it as simplified of an interface as possible, because this is a tool that would be mostly used by non-translators or people that don't even know what a translation memory is. So if you want to see the matches, then it is just better to use memoQ, the main interface of memoQ, either desktop or web, to see such results come up. Right, next question. Is there a way to remove the errors after you address them? It might be hard to know if you've addressed them all, if there are many. That's a very good question. I haven't showed it today. Jolt, would you be able to confirm with me here?
Sure. So the question is whether you can remove the errors. Yes, you have two options. You either fix the errors. I guess you meant by errors any kind of issues, meaning errors and warnings. You can ignore warnings, but you cannot ignore errors. However, if the project manager configured it so, you can still deliver the document with errors, despite the general project setting that would prevent other roles to do that. So the key thing here to remember is that the ICR configuration is there for you as a project manager to configure the ICR step of the project in a way that best fits your specific ICR user. It's very handy to name these ICR configurations after your specific users by the name, or user types like ICR beginner or ICR advanced, and use those features. So yes, you can ignore warnings, or you can fix those warnings. You can even hide ignored warnings. There's a filter on the issues panel. We have not gotten into the details of there, but you can filter your issues by rows or even by issue types. That is warnings and errors, and even hide or show ignored warnings. So yes, you have the whole 9 yards.
Thank you, Jolt. And
Welcome.
this goes together with the next question, actually, which was the project had 5 issues. When you fixed some of them, the number of issues stayed the same. Did I miss something, or the number of QA issues does not change? I've just checked.
Yeah, I've actually checked the most recent version that we have on one of our servers, and when I fixed one of the issues, it did disappear from the issues panel. So it may have been just a demo effect, but yes, it should disappear. The cards should disappear from the side panel.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, it's not fun if there's no demo effect issue happening. Thank you, Jolt.
You're welcome.
All right. Can the ICR users and ICR configuration be used through Plunet? If so, from which version of Plunet? I am unfortunately not able to answer that question from a Plunet perspective. All I can say, though, is as far as my understanding of Plunet goes, Plunet uses, for the integration of memoQ, the memoQ templates. So I do hope that if you are using the memoQ templates in a way that configure the ICR, then they would work, but you would have to check.
Yeah, let me just jump in here. We actually had we actually sent a very early version of memoQ 11.0 to both Plunet and Flowfit. So both of these integration tools are prepared to support the ICR workflow. As far as the specific version number of Plunet and Flowfit, you will need to check with them. But I know for sure that when memoQ 11.0 came out, then both Plunet and Flowfit were prepared to work with this latest version of memoQ.
Next question. Normally we have a translator, then a reviewer, reviewer 1, before we send to the client ICR, which would make the client reviewer 2. When the client finishes the step, what happens next, as our team would want to review the client's changes? Is there a 4th step? There isn't a 4th step per se in memoQ. The workflow is 3 only, but you can simply just reassign a new step to another user. And last question here, can you configure and assign ICR users from the desktop app or in WebTrans, the web PM only? I did everything from the web today just to keep it all in one platform and not to confuse anybody, but you can absolutely create and configure and assign ICR users from the desktop, and it works exactly the same. The ICR configuration itself will, once you assign an ICR user, will ask you which configuration you want to use, and if you don't want to use any that's already existing, you will be sent to the web to perfect those ICR configurations. But otherwise, the whole assignment of the ICR users is done in the desktop as well, possible. With that, I think I have gone through all of the questions.
Thank you so much for this very useful and informative presentation, Ines and Jolt. And thank you to all of those who attended and joined us today. So the webinar is going to be up on the website within a week, and we are going to send you the link through email with a Q&A sheet. But as far as I'm concerned, all of the questions were answered, but still. And thank you again, and have a nice day, evening, morning, wherever you are. And see you in another webinar.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.